Nanabozho and the creation of the world, the great trickster spirit. Long, long ago, when the world as we know it did not yet exist, there was only water everywhere. There was no solid ground, no mountains, no forests, no animals running across the land, because there was no land at all. The sky reflected upon the vast sea, and the waves whispered ancient stories that only the winds could understand. But between the water and the sky, there existed a special being, Nanabozho, the great trickster spirit of Anishinaabe mythology. Nanabozho was no ordinary god. He could change his form, sometimes appearing as a tall and wise man, other times as a giant rabbit, and sometimes as a simple traveller with a spark of mischief in his eyes. Though he loved playing tricks, Nanabozho's heart was filled with love for all creatures. He was a master of deception, but also a creator of the world. The Great Flood. It is said that before the land existed, Nanabozho lived with other spiritual beings in a beautiful world. But something terrible happened. A great flood covered everything. The waters rose higher and higher until not a single patch of dry land remained. Nanabozho survived by floating on a log, along with some animals that had also escaped the rising waters: the beaver, the otter, the moose, the turtle, and the little muskrat. Gazing upon the endless horizon of water, Nanabozho said, "We must find some land to create the world again, but I cannot do it alone." So he asked the animals for help, for even though Nanabozho was a powerful spirit, he knew that true strength lies in teamwork. The journey to the bottom of the world. Nanabozho explained that someone needed to dive to the bottom of the water to bring back a handful of mud. With that mud, he could create the land. First, the beaver volunteered. He was strong and an excellent swimmer. He dove in with a great splash and disappeared beneath the water. Minutes passed, and more minutes. Finally, the beaver emerged, gasping for air, but with no mud in his pores. Next, the otter tried. She was swift and agile in the water. She dove so quickly that only bubbles floated on the surface. A long time passed, but when she resurfaced, she too had failed to reach the bottom. Then it was the moose's turn. Confident in his great endurance, he plunged into the water with all his strength, but the deep waters were too much for him. He surfaced exhausted without any mud. Nanabozho began to worry, but then a small muskrat stepped forward. He was tiny compared to the others, but he spoke with a determination. "I will try the other." Animals exchanged doubtful glances. How could such a small creature succeed where the strong and mighty had failed? But Nanabozho nodded with respect. Sometimes the brave heart of the small is stronger than any muscle. The courage of the little muskrat. The muskrat dived into the water, and time passed. 1, 2, 3 minutes. More minutes went by, and still he did not return. The animals began to fear the worst. Finally, the tiny body of the muskrat floated to the surface, motionless. Nanabozho gently lifted him, sadness filling his heart, for the brave muskrat had taken his last breath. But then something shimmered in his tiny paws, a small handful of mud. Nanabozho smiled with gratitude. It was not in vain. This little hero has brought the seed of the world, the creation of the earth. With the mud in his hands, Nanabozho placed it upon the shell of the great turtle, who had been patiently floating the entire time. Then, with his magical breath, he blew upon the mud. The mud began to grow. It expanded and spread, forming mountains, rivers, forests, and plains. The great turtle also grew, and thus what we now call Turtle Island was formed, the sacred name many indigenous peoples use for North America. Nanabozho smiled as he watched the new land, a world full of life, and though the muskrat had passed on, his bravery was immortalized in every corner of nature. The lesson of Nanabozho. Since then, the legend of Nanabozho has taught an important lesson. No matter how small you are, courage, heart, and determination can change the world. And if you ever see a tiny island floating in the middle of a lake, or hear the whisper of the wind through the trees, perhaps, just perhaps, Nanabozho is near, reminding you that even the tricksters can be great creators. The Raven and the Light. A gift for the world. Long, long ago, when the world was still young, darkness reigned everywhere. There was no sun, no moon, no stars to illuminate the sky. Rivers flowed in shadows, forests were cloaked in darkness, and the creatures that roamed the earth stumbled blindly, never knowing the true face of the world. But amidst the darkness, there was one being unafraid of the shadows, the raven. His black feathers gleamed as if they held a secret, and his sharp eyes observed everything with curiosity and cunning. The raven was a mischievous and clever spirit, both loved and feared, for he could be a trickster or a hero. The secret of the light tired of living in darkness. The raven heard rumors of a powerful old man who lived deep in the forest in a great wooden house. This old man possessed something wonderful, something he guarded jealously, the light of the world locked away in magical spheres. The old man refused to share it with anyone. He kept it only for himself and his beloved granddaughter, fearing that the world would not appreciate it, or that the light would be used up too quickly. But the raven thought, this isn't fair. Light shouldn't belong to just one person. It should be for everyone. And so the raven, cunning as ever, devised a plan. The raven's grand trick. Knowing the old man would never let him enter his house, the raven used a power few knew. He had transformation. He turned himself into a tiny seed and let the wind carry him gently into the granddaughter's garden. The seed fell into her cup of water, and when she drank, the raven was reborn inside her belly, transformed into a tiny human baby. In time, the girl gave birth to a beautiful child with dark hair and shining eyes. The old man, enchanted by his grandson, adored him and granted his every wish. But the child was none other than the raven in disguise, growing quickly and watching closely. One day, the little boy began to cry uncontrollably, kicking and wailing in frustration. He cried so much that the old man, desperate, asked, "What do you want, my child? What can I give you to stop your tears?" The boy pointed his tiny finger upward, toward the glowing spheres of light that hung in the safest corner of the house. The old man hesitated, but finally gave in. He handed one of the spheres of light to the child, letting him play with it. But the moment the raven grasped the sphere, he transformed back into his true form, spreading his black wings with a triumphant caw. The flight of the light. The raven flew swiftly toward the sky, clutching the sphere of light in his beak. The old man shouted in fury, running after him, but it was too late. The raven soared higher and faster, and as he raced through the heavens, the sphere shattered in the sky, exploding into thousands of golden fragments. Thus, the sun, the moon, and the stars were born. The sun shone brightly, warming the earth and awakening the sleeping flowers. The moon appeared with its soft silver glow, watching over the nights. And the stars, tiny sparks of the great treasure, spread across the dark sky like scattered jewels. The legacy of the raven. From that day on, the world was never again trapped in darkness. Thanks to the raven, light became a gift for all, no matter if they were great or small, human or animal. And though many call him a trickster for his mischief and deception, no one can deny that the raven is also a hero. Because sometimes to change the world, it takes a little cunning and the courage to defy the darkness. Long, long ago, when the world was still full of mysteries and trees whispered secrets to the wind, the First Nations of Canada lived in harmony with nature. Animals, rivers, mountains, and even trees had spirits and voices. Among all the trees, one stood out for its beauty. The great maple, with broad green leaves that turned red and gold in autumn, as if the sun itself had painted them with its fingers. But did you know that the maple tree didn't always have the sweet sap we now know as maple syrup? This is the story of how that nectar came to be. The time of abundance. It is said that in the early days of the world, the maple tree already contained sap, but it wasn't a thin, clear liquid. Instead, it was thick, rich syrup, sweet, enough to drink directly from the trunk. The people living in the region soon discovered this. With just a small cut in the bark, the syrup would flow freely, as if the tree was effortlessly sharing its sweetness. No longer needing to hunt or gather as much, the people grew complacent. Why work hard when the maple provided everything they needed? Day after day, they drank the sweet syrup, rested under the tree's shade, and forgot to care for the land or give thanks to nature for its gifts. The spirit of the great Creator. The great Creator, watching from the sky, was saddened to see the people becoming lazy and indifferent. They no longer respected life, the cycles of nature, or the sacred balance between giving and receiving. So, the Creator decided to teach them a lesson. The great lesson, one night, while the people slept after yet another syrup feast, the Creator sent a great rain. It rained and rained, not with fury, but steadily. The rain seeped into the maple trees, diluting the thick, sweet syrup until it became a clear liquid, like water. When the people awoke and rushed to the trees, eager for their golden syrup, they were in for a shock. "What is this, Ishe?" they murmured, tasting the liquid. It was no longer sweet. It was thin and flavorless. Panic spread among them. What would they do without their sweet nectar? They realized they had become too dependent on the maple's gift and had forgotten how to hunt, gather, and cultivate the land. The return of gratitude. But the Creator, wise and compassionate, did not want to punish them forever. Hishu only wished for them to remember the importance of balance and gratitude. So he whispered a secret through the wind. "If you wish to taste the sweet syrup again, you must work for it." The people learned to collect the clear sap in the spring when it flowed most abundantly. They discovered that by patiently boiling it over a fire, the water would evaporate, leaving behind a thick golden liquid, maple syrup. It was no longer as effortless as before. It required work, time, and dedication, but that effort taught them to value the maple's gift and to never forget the importance of respect and gratitude for nature, a symbol that lives in every leaf. From that time on, the maple tree became sacred in Canada. Its leaf, now a national symbol, represents the connection between the land, hard work, the sweetness of life, and respect for nature. So, the next time you see a maple leaf or taste a drop of sweet syrup, remember this story. It's not just a delicious flavor, it's a gift from the earth and a lesson carried in every drop. Long, long ago, when Canada's forests stretched endlessly and the wind sang ancient songs through the pines, there was one creature known to all the animals, the trickster hare. This was no ordinary hare. She was fast, yes, but even faster was her mind. Clever, witty, and just a little cheeky, she always found a way to get what she wanted, even when things seemed tough. In those same forests lived the wolf, strong, swift, and feared by many. But let's just say, he wasn't the smartest in the pack. Though he considered himself a great hunter, his pride was even bigger than his hunger. And that is where our story begins. A harsh winter. It was an especially cold winter. Snow covered everything like a white blanket, and food was scarce. The animals of the forest desperately searched for something to fill their empty bellies. The hare, of course, had no intention of going hungry, but she also didn't want to work too hard for her food. So she came up with a plan as she hopped cheerfully through the snow, pretending not to have a care in the world. She ran into the wolf, who was starving and in a terrible mood. "Hare!" growled the wolf, licking his sharp teeth. "Tonight you'll be my dinner." But the hare, without losing her cool, smiled mischievously. "Your dinner? Me? A tiny, fluffy snack like me? Come on, wolf, I wouldn't even fill one of your teeth. But what if I showed you where to find a real feast?" The wolf, intrigued and with his stomach growling, narrowed his eyes. "A feast? Where? Follow me and see, but I'll need your help, of course." The hare's plan. The hare led the wolf to a frozen lake. The surface glowed like a crystal mirror under the moonlight. "Right here," said the hare, pointing at the ice. "Beneath this ice there are loads of big, delicious fish. All you have to do is dip your tail in the water and wait." The wolf hesitated. "Dip my tail? That easy?" "Of course," the hare assured him, her grin full of mischief. "The longer you keep it there, the more fish will bite. You just need patience." The wolf, not entirely convinced, was too hungry to think much. So he sat by the hole in the ice the hare had made and stuck his tail into the freezing water. Meanwhile, the hare pretended to help, but inside she was laughing. The trap freeze's time passed. The night grew colder. "Still no bites?" the wolf asked, shivering. "Oh, you must wait a bit longer," the hare said, holding back laughter. "That means they're biting extra hard." Eager for his feast, the wolf held on and held on. until his tail became frozen solid in the ice. When the hare saw that her trick had worked, she flipped in the air with glee. "Ha, ha, ha, ha! Look at your feast, silly wolf! You're stuck!" The wolf, furious, tried to pull free. He tugged with all his might until, snap! He broke loose, yes, but left part of his tail behind in the ice. Howling in pain and rage, the wolf swore he would get revenge. But the hare was already far away, leaping through the snow, laughing and calling out, "Thanks for the show, tailless wolf." The echo of the legend. It is said that ever since that day, wolves have had shorter tails and never again trusted a hare's words. But if you ever find yourself in a snowy Canadian forest and see a hare running as if the wind were chasing, perhaps she's still escaping from a very, very angry wolf. Deep in the frigid forests of northern Canada, where winter is so relentless that the wind seems to cut through skin, and the snow whispers ancient secrets, there exists a legend that chills even the bravest hearts. It is the tale of a being that is never satisfied, a dark spirit born from hunger, greed, and despair. Its name is Wendigo, the whisper of winter, long ago, in a time when winters were even harsher and food was scarce. The Anishinaabe, Cree, and Algonquin tribes knew well the dangers of nature. They feared not only the cold and snow, but also what hunger could do to the human heart. It is said that the Wendigo was once a man. An ordinary man who, trapped in the solitude of winter and consumed by starvation, did the unthinkable. He surrendered to darkness, betraying his own humanity. In committing an act of cannibalism, his soul became corrupted, and his body changed forever. He was no longer a man. He had become the Wendigo, the spirit of eternal hunger. What does the Wendigo look like? Those who claim to have seen it describe a towering skeletal figure, its skin stretched tightly over its bones, cracked and grey from the cold. Its face is an elongated skull, sometimes adorned with twisted antlers, and its eyes burn with a hollow fire, as if they contain nothing but the echo of hunger. Its lips are torn, or non-existent, because its hunger is so fierce that it has devoured itself in a desperate attempt to be satisfied. And the most terrifying part? It moves through the trees faster than the wind, leaving deep clawed footprints in the snow. The trapped hunter, one of the most told stories, is that of Kitchi, a brave hunter who became stranded with his family during an especially brutal winter. The game was scarce, the firewood was running low, and the cold seemed to have fangs. Desperate to save his family, Kitchi ventured into the forest in search of food. He walked for days, getting lost among the ice and snow. His body weakened, but his mind suffered even more. Hunger began whispering in his ear, a voice that was not his own. Why suffer? There is a way out. Just give in, just once. Kitchi fought against that voice. He knew the legend of the Wendigo. He knew that if he gave in, he would lose more than his life. He would lose his soul. But cold, hunger, and despair are powerful enemies. One day, a traveller appeared in the forest. Kitchi felt a dark impulse, a terrifying temptation. In a moment of weakness, he committed the forbidden act. And when the blood touched the snow, he was no longer Kitchi, his screams turned to howls, his bones stretched, his skin cracked, and his eyes burned with a ravenous fire. A new Wendigo was born, the eternal hunger. It is said that the Wendigo is never full. The more it eats, the larger it grows, and the larger it grows, the hungrier it becomes. It is an endless cycle, an eternal punishment for those who let greed or despair consume their hearts. But the Wendigo is not just a physical creature. It is also a symbol, a warning of what can happen when selfishness and desperation take hold. It lives in the shadows of the forests, but also in the darkness of the human mind. How to protect yourself from the Wendigo. Legends say that fire repels it, that light and warmth are enemies of its frozen soul. But above all, one must protect oneself by keeping the heart full of hope, kindness, and solidarity. Because the Wendigo feeds on more than flesh. It feeds on the weakness of the human spirit. So if you ever find yourself alone in a snowy forest and the wind begins to sound like a distant whisper, don't listen, don't answer, and above all, never let hunger take more than your soul can bear.